Hi, welcome back to my channel. We are going to be talking about why you might not be progressing in your surfing and what ways you can identify to try and make more progress in your surfing and get better and more confident out in the water. So the first reason you might not be progressing, whether you're a beginner or a more intermediate surfer or somewhere in between, is that you might be using the wrong surfboard for what you're trying to do. I just did a video on this, and so I'll link it above, but it really depends on the size and the shape of your surfboard and what you're trying to do, what you should choose, and how that surfboard will help you or maybe hurt you in trying to achieve the goals that you want to, like gaining more speed or turning harder or trying to do some more like longboardy type tricks. So check out that video after you watch this one to figure out what might be holding you back with your surfboard. So the next one that is kind of out of your control but also could really be making it difficult for you to progress is the conditions that you're surfing in. Some of this just depends on whether it's more summertime waves or wintertime waves, because that'll really affect how the conditions are. But if you don't have the right board or your skill level is not great for the waves that you're trying to surf, for example, if you're trying to ride a very short board in small, mushy waves, or you're trying to ride a very long board in fast, bigger, peakier waves, that's going to make it a lot harder to progress. And also, if you're trying to ride waves that are just too big for your skill level, you should really be just trying to ride smaller 1 to 2, 2 to 3 waves when you're first learning how to surf and still getting the basics down. I know that for me, I was really not making much headway or momentum with my surfing because we had a couple pretty big swells here in California. So I actually ended up going back to some basics, which I'll talk about a little bit more in this video, of just popping up in the whitewash. There was a lot of power from the whitewash because the waves were so big. So I was able to just get some more practice in with catching a wave, imagining catching a wave and then popping up. Or sometimes catching the reform waves can be a lot of fun when it is too big for you to paddle out into the lineup. Another thing I know I was personally really struggling with, and I think is very common, is learning how to adjust how you surf and how you catch waves according to the board that you're using or the conditions that you're in. So for example, if you're catching mushier waves, then you need to be closer to the beach and more on the inside, especially if you don't quite have the strength to paddle into the waves. You need that extra help from being closer to the beach to be able to catch those waves. And for example, if it's bigger than you often and faster, you often need to be a little further out so that you can catch the wave at just the right time. And if your skill level is still pretty beginner, which I definitely fall into this category a lot, I'm working on it, but if you're still closer to the beginner stage of surfing, then you're going to want to be catching waves further on the shoulder versus closer to the pocket. But again, like with a lot of things with surfing, this depends on the type of wave that you're trying to catch. So if it is a small, mushier, or a weaker wave, then you're going to need to be closer to the pocket. And so learning how to adjust accordingly to the waves, sometimes this takes me half the session just to get used to it, but as time goes on, I know I have been getting better, and I know you will too if you learn how to read the conditions and adjust your style or where you're paddling to the waves or the board you're choosing according to the wave conditions. So as I mentioned before, when the waves were bigger here in California and I was going back to practicing my pop-up more, this is kind of one of those areas that it can get a little bit overlooked and you get really stoked and excited about trying to surf, and sometimes you skip over actually putting in the time and the reps of practicing popping up, paddling effectively, reading waves. And if you can teach yourself how to do these things either on land or out in the water, be very proactive about trying to work on them, it'll help you a lot in the long run. And building up that muscle, often with surfing it looks very easy and you just don't realize, at least I didn't realize, how much muscle and work it would take to surf and to paddle around. Another thing to keep in mind with the basics is maybe just getting some workouts in. I have a little series I did for 7 days of working out, ideas of things that you can do to work out when you're not able to surf. So definitely go check those out. And just know that sometimes it really helps to go back to the basics, because for myself, I know I was trying to catch waves and really just taking a long time to pop up, and it was just making it really difficult for me to catch waves because I would lose my balance or get knocked off the wave before I could get popped up and then try to actually start turning and riding the wave. So one thing I know also for myself personally that's been very difficult, but I think this is very common across the board for beginner surfers, is sometimes we get a little too much stuck in our comfort zone, and it's difficult for us to try to not take risks, but to try to push ourselves to paddle out into a little bigger waves than maybe we're used to, knowing that we have the ability and the skill to ride those waves, and we have become comfortable and confident riding waves that are a little bit smaller. So just trying to push yourself a little bit outside of your comfort zone. I know that I was psyching myself out a lot about paddling out into like 3 to 4 foot waves at times when I know full well that I can handle it. And I think this is where it's really important, obviously, to know your skill level, because you want to push yourself to keep trying to progress and to surf in different wave conditions. But this goes hand in hand with the next point that I would say can hold back your surfing, which is pushing yourself too hard and putting yourself in scary situations or difficult situations. And this is where you as a surfer have to determine what your skill level is and what you're capable of actually doing. Sometimes if you paddle out, and I have done this, so don't do it if you can avoid it, but if you paddle out in waves that are too big or too fast or too shore breaky for what you're capable or comfortable doing, then it can make it more difficult the next time you try to go out surfing, because you've kind of scared yourself back into not being comfortable in slightly bigger waves. So this really is like a balance of figuring out, what you're comfortable with, working on that, and then once you start getting kind of bored or that becomes a little too easy, then trying to progress to something a little more difficult. Another thing that you've probably heard before, but it really does help a lot, because with surfing there is so much going on, is to set specific goals for each session. You can do 1 or 2 or maybe 3 if they're small goals that you're trying to work on, but it really helps going into a surf session being aware of what exactly you'd like to work on. And some of this also just depends on the conditions too. For example, if it's breaking faster and a little peakier, I've been trying to work on popping up towards more the back of my board so that I can do a bottom turn and try to keep riding on the wave. If it is a little mushier, I'm trying to work on being closer to the pocket and really maybe even getting a little bit of the momentum from the foam to help me push into the waves. But having that idea of exactly what you'd like to work on really helps you to remember to work on it when you're out in the water. This way too, it makes it kind of bite-sized chunks that you're working on with surfing, because there is just so much to learn, and it can get very overwhelming at times to try to do every little thing at one time. But if you have specific goals that you'd like to work on, you can work on those, accomplish them, and then move on to the next thing next time that you're having a surf session. So the last thing I would say that can actually sometimes end up holding you back, that can often be tied in with all of these ideas, is just taking it a little too seriously and just stressing yourself out about having to be perfect or accomplish all of your goals. Just remember that surfing, the point of surfing is to have fun, to enjoy being in the water, to relax. It's not meant to be another stressor in life. So just remember to try to keep it fun, have a good time. If the waves aren't great, try to just make some progress where you can and just be grateful for the time you have to be out in the water. If it's flat, maybe have some fun with your friends out in the water on your surfboard. Just try to keep it light and fun, because that really helps you get through those points in surfing where it's really difficult and you feel like you aren't making much progress. If you can keep it fun and just enjoy every little aspect of the process, it really helps you to have a lot more endurance for making it through those difficult times with surfing. So I hope the video was helpful for you. I am trying to work on uploading at least weekly, but depending on life and things happening, sometimes I'm not able to do it exactly every week, but I am trying to accomplish the goal of around every week having a new video come out. So if you like these videos and you want to learn more about progressing your surfing or tips and tricks I've learned in the 2-3 years that I've been learning how to surf and boogie board, be sure to subscribe down below. It really means a lot for me. And if you have any comments or ideas or videos you'd like to see, please comment them down below. I'd love to hear them. And thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care and stay stoked.